Okay. So it's 6 o'clock and we'll start the public hearing for about the code adoption ordinance. A background, the Board of Selectmen have been working on this for what, 2 years? Probably around 2 years now. We realized that our current ordinance book, or book of ordinances, is hard to read, hard to follow. It has ordinances in it that have been removed, but they're not removed from our list of our ordinance book. So we realized that we needed to do something to organize them, bring them up to date as far as make sure we took out all the old ones. And
in general, streamline so it's easier to read.
Right.
Because as it stands right now, there are several things where you start reading and it tells you to jump ahead 100 pages. That tells you to jump back 25 pages. So to get the actual ordinance, you have to read 4 different spots in non-sequential order. So
the new ordinances are also searchable by any word.
Right. So you can find, if you're looking for something specific, instead of bringing the book out and scanning it, trying to find what you're looking for, or if you remember what year it was passed, they're in order. But yeah, so these will be searchable. They'll be online. Other towns, if you look, E-Code, the name of the company, other towns have done it too. So I will read the proposed ordinance and then we'll discuss how the changes are and then take any questions. We're still working on how the town meets, what we're voting on would be, at the town meeting, would be this one ordinance here. So it's called the Code Adoption Ordinance for the town of Allentown. Be it enacted and ordained by the town of Allentown in town meeting assembled. Article 1, adoption of the code. And the code is what we call the whole list of the ordinance, the new list, organized. That's what the code is. The codification of the ordinances of a general and permanent nature of the town of Allentown as revised, codified, and consolidated into chapters and sections by General Code LLC and consisting of chapters 1 through 435 is hereby approved, adopted, ordained, and enacted as the code of the town of Allentown, Connecticut, hereinafter called the code. All provisions contained in the codification provided for herein and known as the code of the town of Allentown shall be in force and effect on and after the effective date of this ordinance. 1-2, continuation of existing provisions. The provisions of the code, insofar as they are substantively the same as those of the ordinance, enforced immediately prior to the enactment of the code by this ordinance, and intended as a continuation of such ordinances and not as new enactments, and the effectiveness of such provisions shall date from the date of the adoption of the prior ordinance. A copy of the 1-3, copy of code on file. A copy of the code in loose leaf form has been filed in the office of the town clerk and shall remain there for use and examination by the public until final action is taken on this ordinance. Such copy shall be certified to by the town clerk, and such certified copy shall remain on file in the office of said town clerk to be made available to persons desiring to examine the same during all times while said code is in effect. 1-4, publication filing. The clerk of the town of Allentown shall cause to be published in the manner required by law a copy of this adoption ordinance. Sufficient copies of the code shall be maintained in the office of the clerk for inspection by the public at all times during regular office hours. The enactment and publication of this ordinance, coupled with the availability of a copy of the code for inspection by the public, shall be deemed held and considered to be due and legal publication of all provisions of the code for all purposes. 1-5, amendments to code. Any and all additions, deletions, amendments, or supplements to the code, when adopted in such form as to indicate the intention of the town, to make them a part thereof shall be deemed to be incorporated into such code, so that references to the code of the town of Allentown shall be understood and intended to include such additions, deletions, amendments, or supplements. 1-6, amendments to the code. Any and all additions, deletions, amendments, and supplements to any of the ordinance in the code of the town of Allentown, or any new ordinances, when enacted or adopted in such form as to indicate the intention that they be a part thereof, shall be deemed to be incorporated into such code, so that reference to the code shall be understood and intended to include such additions, deletions, amendments, or supplements. Whenever such additions, deletions, and amendments or supplements to the code shall be enacted or adopted, they shall thereafter be included in the code as amendments and supplements thereto. 1-7, altering or tampering with code, penalties or violations. It shall be unlawful for any code in any manner what ordinance adopting this code shall be construed to repeal or otherwise affect the validity of any of the following: an ordinance promising or guaranteeing the payment of money for the town or any evidence of the town's indebtedness, any appropriation ordinance providing for the levy of taxes or for any annual budget, any order annexing territory to the town or excluding territory as part of the town, any ordinance granting any franchise permit or other right, any zoning regulations or amendments thereto, any subdivision regulations or amendments thereto, any ordinance creating a special services district, any ordinance approving, authorizing, or otherwise relating to any contract, agreement, lease, deed, or other instrument, any ordinance adopting a preliminary or development plan, and any temporary or special ordinance. B, all ordinances pursuant to this section are hereby recognized as continuing in full force and effect to the same extent as if set out at length in this section. 1-11, effect of repeal of ordinances. The repeal of an ordinance shall not revise any ordinances in force before or at the time of the ordinance repeal took effect, unless expressly stated. The repeal of an ordinance shall not affect any punishment or penalty incurred before the repeal took effect, nor any suit, prosecution, or proceeding pending at the time of the repeal for an offense committed under the ordinance's repeal. And 1-12, changes in previously adopted ordinances. In compiling and preparing the ordinances for publication as the code of the town of Allentown, no changes in the meaning or intent of such ordinances have been made, except as provided for in subsections B and C thereof. Certain grammatical changes and other minor,
Substantive.
Yes, I can say that word.
Substantive.
Okay. Changes were made in one or more of said pieces of legislation. It is the intention of the town that all such changes be adopted as part of the code, as if the ordinances had been previously formally amended to read as such. In addition, the amendments and/or additions as set forth in Schedule A attached thereto and made a part hereof are made herewith to become effective upon the effective date of this ordinance. And the chapter and section number references are to the ordinances as they have been renumbered and appear in the
And that was like 3 mouthfuls of legalese.
Yep, it was written by the lawyer. But it does explain the process that we went through with putting the codes from as they were written and passed, the ordinances as they were individually written and passed, and then putting them into an easy to read and follow and search document of the ordinance.
Which will be online.
Which will be online. So anyone can read them at any time and they can search them online. So some of the changes most of the changes were grammatical, spelling, changing of the format. In some instances where there's mentions of the boards and commissions, they were adjusted to reflect state statutes, where over the years the statutes might have changed, but the ordinances weren't updated to reflect that. So that would have been a change to reflect the statute. And this could be for like terms or election stuff that had been changed through the state statutes over the years. The places where and this was, all of this had gone through the lawyer as well, and there were suggestions to change right at the beginning of the new code, where the assessor, treasurer, and tax collector, we amended under the removal for it to state that the Board of Selectmen may remove the tax collector during his or her appointed term, but only for cause. And then a definition of what cause. When it previously stated that those positions are appointed positions, but their appointments ended every 2 years to reflect the Board of Selectmen, and the Board of Selectmen would reappoint. It was advised legally that they meant the same in the wording, but they needed to be written clearer that as they're being appointed positions, the board couldn't just change their mind and decide they wanted someone else to be there. Because they are appointed hired positions, legally that can't be done. So
It can only be removed for cause.
They can only be removed for cause. So if we did that, if we actually did that, it's a legal issue for the town because the person holding the position, not just loses it after 2 years when it's an appointed town elected position. It's it. We are recommending to change that. And the other change would be under planning and zoning, which I highlighted. But I can look it up. 146. So under planning and zoning, we changed it. Under the vacancy of planning and zoning, where it states that the Planning and Zoning Commission vacancy shall be filled within 90 days by the majority vote of the members of the commission. They were recommended to add, if not filled within 90 days, then the Board of Selectmen will appoint a member to fill the remaining term. So it's just to make sure that the board's full. They have 90 days.
The previous ordinance did not state an amount of time, it
Right.
said reasonable time, and
Reasonable time.
we've had an experience where it was over a year, so it needs to be,
Yeah.
needed.
We need to quantify the time.
Right, it just said reasonable time and didn't have a number, so we put the number of 90 days. And those are the ones that are more of an actual change to the meaning of the ordinance, when all the rest are grammatical, and if there were fees listed in some of them, the fees were taken out because being an ordinance, it would have to be changed to the town meeting every time we changed fees. So numbers were taken out for some of those. Trying to think of what some of the other things.
Where are we gonna list those numbers?
They would be,
In the individual departments.
yeah, depending on.
And I believe most of those said we changed them as per state statute, to run with the state statute, because the state statute changed. Some of them were $5, and now the state statute's $250. You know, they were just such old ordinances. There's a lot of really old pieces.
Yeah, and that's some of the other words, I think, those are.
The only ordinance that we left the fees in was the building inspector ones, because he said they're by statute, and we actually do have to review that ordinance every
every time the state updates theirs.
Yeah. Both the old ordinances and the proposed code are all online, so people can read them and check them against each other. So when we have the town meeting, if anyone has specific questions about things, and we will have the attached definitions in the ordinance for the meeting, and it will be published online before the minutes and then we know it.
But for the town meeting, we're not planning on having whole trees worth of printouts.
Yeah,
It will be,
we
we encourage people to look at them online to,
or come in and we'll have copies here that people can look at.
Yep.
And
Several hundred pages.
because even we were
right, so
wondering,
400 pages, 200 pages,
I know,
old and new.
I print it.
And you print it, yeah.
we were even wondering how we were gonna do the town meeting because of every individual ordinance, there was like, this is gonna be like a long effort. So that's why we had the one big ordinance that I read, it just covers everything. So that would be voted on, it might be a whole change, all the changes. Does that make any more sense?
Well, it makes some more sense. I mean, you know, somehow or other, I think if you had had sort of an introductory in English paragraph at the top of that announcement, so people would know what they were looking for, as opposed to, you know, I found that might have helped a little bit. I mean, obviously, I happened to see it this morning. It was voted on, I guess, at this meeting this morning. It was voted on at the last one.
I think it was like probably a couple of meetings ago, but we've been talking about it we've been working on this for like 2
Yeah,
years.
this
I've
come up on
actually been
several
working
meetings.
with planning and zoning on this for quite a while. I was surprised to even have heard about it from them.
Well,
Did you-
are you really surprised?
Because the
I
company
have
that
not missed one meeting.
No, 'cause they're actually going to codify planning and zoning as well, when once the race up.
the company that we're working with does the same thing with what we're doing with the ordinances. They can do the same thing with the zoning regs so that they're easy to search, easy to read, easy to follow, and are also updated. So we need to do the, updates on the regs before we.
But they need update, yes, exactly. So it's a moot point. So.
Right, but step one to get there is first do this cleanup step,
Right.
then we can move forward with the steps that we,
And they have
Yeah.
actually included planning and zoning in this, there's just no changes. Which,
Well,
I
there is
mean,
the one change.
well, no, that's not part of your regs, I meant they've included the
right.
regs in here, they made no changes to the regs.
So all the regs are in
The
there?
regs are in there too.
Okay.
yes.
Well, I need to go home and reread what you just,
And I did
Right,
actually
because-
send that to the planning and zoning board, I'm not sure,
But
but
the
were-
feedback from citizens' comments, thank you, Judith,
Yeah.
is I think for the town meeting, we need to do a non-legal paragraph description of exactly what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Because right now, there just seems to be confusion on what we're trying to do. Confusion is going to lead to,
yeah, mostly very minor changes.
right,
well, and if I may continue a little bit, so all town ordinances are going to be in the code. So this, we're voting one time to approve the code as it stands.
Yeah.
May I ask, what proportion of the voters in town are on the email list?
I don't know, I haven't been doing the email, so I don't know. 400? I think there might be close to 400 people on the email list, which is small.
Which is very small, I mean, it's not a huge, I think one of the biggest problems we have in town is communication. I mean, we have a sign that says town meeting at one corner. We have the email list. how many
We
people
also
are
have the
subscribed?
We have the website. We always tell people if they want to know what's going on to just go to the website because we put stuff right on the front. So.
I go to the website and then I read down, and then there's something that's going to be happening that's already happened. So then I think, well, I'm at the end because that's already happened. And then there's more stuff later on. So I'm not sure that, at least the town.gov, I don't go to the Facebook page. I don't go. I always assume that everything that's important is going to be on the .gov page. And I really do feel that there are, even today, this seems to be, that was up front, but then we ended up with, what UCFS was going to be here for, whatever, I didn't know.
So, Judith, if I may, I get your point perfectly,
Okay.
and I think something that we need to address as a board, and it directly relates to this, is I think we need to hire a website designer to do a complete overhaul of the website.
We've already been working on that.
You did the library first, then he's coming over here to do it. Ours is a little more expensive.
Okay, so the library one is done?
Yeah.
I'll put the library one in.
Well, another thing, when you send out, it would be wonderful if more people were on the email list. So when the tax bills go out, or, at the farmer's market, or whatever,
We promote it all the time.
Yeah.
We do.
Well, we
And
tell
actually,
everybody
during
when they
tax
come
time,
in,
yeah.
every single person that comes in, we tell them,
Yep.
sign up for the email, so you
And-
know what
well,
happens.
During tax time, I signed up many people.
Yeah, well, good. I mean,
It's hard to figure out how to reach people when
We
they
try,
don't.
No one
we
wants
try
to.
everything. We can't we try to make it easily to find.
We do advertise in the paper, but a lot of people don't use the
Well,
paper
I
anymore.
Paper as well.
I have a distribution list for my neighborhood, so I always,
Tell them to sign up for the email.
Newsletter.
yeah, I've done that a few times. I never asked them whether they've done it, so. It is a huge disadvantage that we don't have a better communication network. What we can
What
do
else would
about
you
that
suggest?
Yeah, what else can
is
we
a
do?
very different issue. I'm just, bouncing it around.
No, we're up to anything we've tried.
So, do you have any concerns about any of these ordinances? So it should be a pretty easy, okay, this is what's going to happen, and now we have a code book, and sell the idea that it's going to be searchable and how much better it's going to be.
Because
and we're all
everyone's always
set.
asking, why don't we have the ordinances online? I'm like, we can't, because
There
they're
was too
not,
much.
there's ordinances still here that if you get to the middle, it says ordinance one's been repealed, but ordinance one is still here, but it was repealed, when you read through the ordinances, it was repealed somewhere. But, so things were repealed, but not physically taken out, so that's why, or they were amended, and there's just another ordinance somewhere that says ordinance whatever is amended to read this, but it wasn't, unless you get to page 49 and happen to notice that ordinance that you were going by, because it's listed right here, was amended, and you've been going by the wrong ordinance, so.
Yeah.
We didn't want to put them online because we knew it would be confusing like that. So,
But now they are going to be on.
now they'll be online, they will be.
Once this
active.
overall ordinance is passed at the town
Right,
meeting.
exactly. And that will be the effective date that all of these will then be approved?
No, they would still be approved at their regular date. It would
No, they were not, so the only ordinance we're approving, and correct me if I'm wrong here,
Yeah.
is the ordinance to streamline, update, and put online, but the ordinances are in effect to the date when they were originally passed.
Yeah, it said that right.
Even the ones
But the
that you-
changes, any minor changes would be effective at the town meeting.
Yeah.
Or 30 days after the town.
Right, whatever.
Right.
It said right in the ordinance that none of the dates would change.
even the planning and zoning 90-day requirement?
I think because it's not really an actual change, it's just clarifying what it
a
already said.
reasonable time,
Yeah,
it's defined
it's-
as 90 days.
It's not a substantive change.
Yeah. I
Substantive.
still can't say that word.
That's what I'm saying for you. It's not a substantive change to the ordinance, so it doesn't
Okay.
change the ordinance.
All right,
Yeah.
well, that, so you're not going to entertain comments from people on planning and zoning that are going to object to this?
I
Pam
think
said she already sent it to him.
yeah, I think it already got sent to them. We already sent them all the information.
Well, it wasn't, they read at the last meeting, yes.
Is your next meeting before September 14th?
I think, yes, it's the 8th.
And Judith, you come fully armed with knowledge to say, hey, we've been sent something.
So just change the, what was it, like an amount of time into 90 days.
Yes, a reasonable amount of time now says 90 days.
Right. That's fine.
I don't know what another reasonable amount of time.
Well, as, you know, this is certainly not an earth-shaking issue by any manner. A good solid cleanup.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
I think, you know, in the total scheme of things, it's not the type of town meeting we want to be sure we have a huge
And
attendance. I mean,
And like any set of local ordinances around the country, there are entire books written on silly laws that are on the books. And please, take the time to read through our ordinances and see what things you can find in Vaughan town ordinances.
There are some very
There's some interesting things in there, and that's all I'll say. Please, read it.
and that time meeting must have been fun. Well,
So-
I didn't have to.
glad it wasn't me.
Particularly if you stumbled over any words there.
I know.
If you're not going to give us any page numbers or.
Page number was it?
I believe it was page 50, because I was just
In the old one or the new one?
in the old one.
You can give the name of the ordinance.
No, we don't want to do that, please.
Okay.
This is our, anyone who watches this on YouTube, you know, this is our teaser to get engagement.
It's probably the longest
Some
ordinance.
pages.
I think it's the longest ordinance too. It's probably like 10 pages. It's a good read.
All right, I'll go home and read the longest ordinance.
You might not want to. All right, so I guess that's the end of the public hearing. If anyone's watching and has any questions, they can, let us know before the.
Okay, tell me that tentative date again, please.
Number 14.
I actually missed that.
Oh, yeah.
Big loss.
Are we in?